Level up your LA Kings experience with the new Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access. Enjoy great seats to the game along with premier dining inside the Lexus Club with all-you-can-eat food and non-alcoholic beverages. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings item and parking with your purchase. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn rewards on each purchase from the only ticket company that rewards you for buying. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings.
You're listening to an LA Kings podcast. For more episodes of this and every other Kings program, visit lakings.com/podcast.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
Welcome back, Kings fans. I am Jesse Cohen. This is All the Kings Men. If you listen to this podcast, I'm sure you're aware by now that Eric Portillo signed a 3-year contract extension. We'll get into that and the goaltending timeline and more in a future episode when we revisit our top 10 questions for the offseason. At this point, the only remaining unresolved issue is the status of Arthur Kaliev, so hopefully that will wrap itself up in time for the start of training camp. We still have a few weeks left. In the meantime, we're continuing our summer series, and today we've got a bit of a rambling conversation with Ted Sobel. I want to warn you in advance that this might be the most old man yells at clouds episode we've done in quite a while. And I'm not even sure I agree with some of the stuff I said on it. I've had a day or two to reflect back on the conversation, and there's some takes in there that I would probably take back if pressed on. Either way, I hope you enjoy it. Here's my conversation with Ted Sobel. All right, joining me now today, Sports USA contributor. He's covered sports for over half a century. The man that used to be Ted Sobel. How are you doing today, Ted?
I'm great. Didn't you used to be Jesse Cohen?
Yeah. Well, for a little while I still am.
Always a pleasure to join you, sir.
So, Ted, this is going to be, we're in the middle of summer. There hasn't been news for weeks. There probably won't be news for 2 more weeks. And so I wanted to have some 2 or 3 random conversations, and I couldn't think of anybody better than you to have them with. If anybody who grew up in Southern California should know the name Ted Sobel. And if you don't, well, you know, things happened before you were born, and that's just all there is to it. So one thing, so I was telling you yesterday, sort of in preparing for this episode, and I was listening to an episode of the Bill Simmons podcast, which I enjoy doing, mainly because he talks about a lot of things that I don't know anything about, and so I don't get distracted by saying, well, that's not true. Well, that's not true. Well, that's not true. I just take it for granted that everything he's saying is correct.
Okay.
But one of the things he was talking about with his guest, Chuck Klosterman, was the idea of crown jewel franchises in North American sports. Before we get into that, one of the other things they talked about that I want to briefly address was the idea of arenas that are beloved. And the guest pointed out that the words beloved and the words new are not compatible.
Not usually.
You can't come up with something new that is beloved. Something has to become beloved over time.
Unless you're the architect of the building, then it's probably
sure,
beloved
but
to
like
you.
as far as mass popularity,
Of
and so they were
course.
calling out like Camden Yards and Lambeau Field and Soldier Stadium and these classic
Soldier Field, yeah.
arenas, which by today's standards are dumps.
Yeah, totally.
But they are beloved because when the urge came to tear them down and build a new sparkling Intuit Dome, nobody did it. They let them stick around.
Yes.
And I see that all the time when teams come out with new jerseys or new uniform combinations. There's always some urge, and it drives me crazy. And part of this is just that I was born a cranky old man. The idea of a uniform being boring or a name being boring, that somehow that's bad. And I just think, okay, well, I don't want a team name pulled from a movie commercial from 10 years ago. I don't want a uniform thrown together with the colors that are exciting today, right? Like when I go back and I look at my high school yearbook, I look like a teenager pulled from 1996.
Right.
I don't want that forever for my sports franchises. I want a team and a look in a stadium that looks like it could have been from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, aughts, teens, and now 20s again.
Are we maybe mentioning the number one example of that, like the Mighty Ducks from a movie?
Well, at the time, yes, but ironically, had they just let it be,
right,
and just let it be the Mighty Ducks, now there's a whole generation of people who look back on nostalgia at the Mighty Ducks, which was a goofy, silly decision. But if you're gonna make a goofy, silly decision, by God, stick with it.
Yeah,
like, so yeah, and the Sharks, there's a bunch of teams that came in that era that wear teal.
Yeah.
So okay, just wear teal. I don't know why the Sharks added orange to their color scheme. I don't think of orange when I think of Sharks.
No.
I don't know why the Kraken have that thin red stripe on their uniforms. I don't get it. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out.
They've been around for 10 minutes though, so we'll give the Kraken the benefit of the doubt.
I don't, but anyway.
Okay.
So this is the larger conversation I wanted to get into.
Okay.
In this conversation, they were talking about the decline of baseball. And they talked about, the fact that they've been having this conversation for 20 years. And I thought, 20 years? Man, I'm finally old enough now that 20 years ago, I was an adult. I have most of my memories from what was going on around 20 years ago. And I realized, 20 years ago was when the Red Sox finally won the World Series for the first time.
Yeah.
And this is the thought I came up with that I'm going to try and apply to hockey that I wanted to have you on for. When the Red Sox won the World Series, and then not just won it once, but won it, 4 times in a short spurt?
No, I think it was
3 or 4.
It was 3, I think.
Okay, and then the Cubs won it.
Yes.
That was the end of baseball's story.
I don't believe that at all, actually. I think that's just timing. I think baseball was, I don't want to say dying, but dying as a national pastime before that, because football had taken over already, and everybody has cared about football for the last over 30 years now, and more than baseball. And I think a lot of that is more generational because kids stopped playing Little League, and I don't think it was just the mystique.
Well, let me try.
Great franchise.
Let me try and sell you on this concept.
Okay.
I think that prior to, I don't know when, probably the mid 90s, late 90s, and this just could be because that's when I was in high school and started paying attention and
maybe
remembering things. But listen, every league and every sport, obviously, every new season is a new story. Every game is a new story. Every period, right? You can break it down as much as you want. But I don't remember, even until the mid 2000s, thinking of things in terms of stories. It was just, who's good this year? Who's good that year? Oh, there's a strike. That's a shame. Oh, there's replacement players. That's weird. This team has won this many times. That team has won that many times. But because the media turned during the McGuire and Sosa thing, it became a story.
No doubt. And
I think Michael Jordan's last 3-year run with the Bulls became a story. And I think sports went from being what we would call, episodic to being viewed as serialized. So suddenly you had these stories, and suddenly the media was invested in telling these stories. So once Michael Jordan won his 6 and then retired, then it was, who's going to be the next Jordan, which is a silly question, right? It'll be somebody.
Yeah. Right.
And we don't have to worry about it. But it was like they were constantly trying to create the next story, and there never was one until Kobe Bryant and LeBron James sort of came around.
Right.
But in baseball, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think we could be mixing success stories with what is truly important in whatever sport. Because if it's a huge success, like Tiger Woods, for example, it's going to be huge. Whatever it is, it's going to be brought up a gazillion ways in the media. If it's just a one-time thing, it's not going to last. It's just it's a fast food.
Well, then you know what? I'm going to disagree with you, but you've changed my theory. Okay. I now think that Tiger Woods might be the first introduction of the story idea taking over. I mean, probably not. It's probably like Muhammad Ali or something. But anyway.
Yeah. It's before there was a guy named Babe Ruth, by the way.
Sure, but this is more a conversation about the media and how it changes how we think about things.
Well, the media called Babe Ruth, that was what changed baseball. Baseball was having major issues, and if it wasn't for Babe Ruth, I don't know if we would have ever had baseball as the pastime.
But calling it the
Going way back.
pastime really just means it was popular in a few
Yes.
major hubs. The population was totally different. The distribution
Yeah, of course.
media in the country was shit, blah, 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 blah. So
Right.
what I'm thinking about is as cable starts to progress, as talk radio starts to progress, and then ultimately the internet,
Okay.
media invests in stories that will have the broadest appeal. So one of the things they were talking about on this episode was the idea that the Yankees, the Cowboys, and the Lakers will always be discussed, whether they're good or bad. If they're doing bad, it's what's wrong with the Cowboys. If they're doing great, it's how great are the Cowboys.
Absolutely.
So then I started thinking about, well, when was the last time I heard about baseball? And after the Red Sox won, it was the Cubs. And other than that, it was Houston cheating. And other than that, I don't really like Shohei Ohtani should be this huge thing, but I don't know. I just don't hear about it that much.
Well, I think he will be more of a huge thing after just 1 year in Los Angeles happens to be with one of those franchises that we talked about, I think in the next few years, we shall see, does he turn baseball around? Because he does it at Dodger Stadium.
Well,
and when everybody else sees that that's the only stadium or one of the few that has sellouts every night.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
but
a
we'll
success
see,
story again.
But I kind of feel like as all the leagues have pushed towards parity, once you get rid of dynasties, when a good team wins an isolated or when a big city wins an isolated title, I'm not sure it resonates. Like the Dodgers won the World Series, the Lakers won the World Championship in COVID year, I think, right?
Exactly.
I don't think anybody cares. And if the Yankees won the World Series next year, I don't think it would matter as much as it did when they were winning 3 out of 4 or whatever it was in the late 90s.
That's a tough one. I don't have an answer for that.
I mean, the Celtics just won the title, and I don't know a single person other than Bill Simmons who cares.
It's because you don't hang out in Boston, but
but they're everywhere. You can't avoid people from Boston anymore.
That is true. I don't think that Boston is really, despite the fact they have more championships than any other NBA team, I don't think the Celtics are a national team. They just are an extremely successful franchise over many decades.
That's possible. So here's the pivot. I want to take it into hockey.
Okay.
If the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Cup,
yes,
would that be the end of the current story in the NHL? Would the NHL go into a lull until we found a new story?
Well, I don't know what the story in the NHL is that you're saying is going to change. What is your version of what is the NHL now? Remember,
I think the one thing that nobody can stop talking about right now is will the Maple Leafs finally get out? They made it out of the first round once. They got beat in the second round. I just think that right now the momentum driving story in the NHL is will Toronto win the Stanley Cup? And part of that is because they've invested a ton of money in these guys. Part of it is because they haven't won since expansion. The original expansion, not the subsequent expansions.
Right.
It's arguably the biggest market in the league. It's the media hub of the league. It's at some level the engine that drives the league, right? I know Canadian players are not as prevalent as they used to be, but they're still at least the plurality, if not the majority of players, and most of them come from Southern Ontario.
Okay, but you and I follow the game and have followed the game for many, many years, as long as you've been around.
Yeah.
You being an Ottawa native and all that good stuff.
Toronto, but family's from Ottawa.
Okay, but it's in your blood, right?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not in my blood, but I started very young.
Sure, you got a transfusion.
Exactly. That's a good way of putting it. Okay. But the average human doesn't know the Toronto Maple Leafs haven't won since Terry Sawchuk became an LA King, by the way. That's the nobody talks about that.
No. Well, okay. I mean, I've
the curse of Sawchuk.
I've written articles about it, and one of my favorite ways of phrasing it is he was on the team for literally 1 year and then literally passed away.
Yeah, he literally left after seeing me on the bench in the final game of his LA Kings career. I mean, that's all.
He was no longer on this mortal coil.
Yes.
Shortly after leaving.
Right. And Red Kelly, don't forget, was the coach who was there, and former Leaf. They both had just won the Cup in Toronto.
But let me put it in terms of the Kings, since I am a Kings fan.
Yes.
And I don't know if this will resonate with anybody else or if it's just my take.
Okay.
But I think when they won the Stanley Cup in 2012 and 2014, we hoped that there was another one coming. But now that we're 10 years out and there hasn't been, I look at that as, okay, that was the end. And now maybe it's just the end of chapter 1, but that was the end of a story of a franchise that had been going on for, at the time, 45 years, I think.
Yes.
44, 45 years.
Yes.
Now, at the moment, we're still looking for an epilogue to that story because we're hoping that there's another one within the careers of Anze Kopitar and Drew Doughty. Because if they win another one,
soon.
well, but if let's say they win another one 10 years from now.
Yes.
I think it's part of a different story.
There's no doubt. So
we're in this epilogue to this story that ended. And I just think right now, again, I'm not like married to this opinion. It's just something I was thinking about and I wanted somebody with perspective. I just feel like the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, if they won the cup, Seattle's won a cup, or excuse me, St. Louis has won a cup, Vegas won the cup, Washington and Ovechkin, like the stories are kind of done. I would say McDavid, except that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is just because I'm biased against Edmonton because I'm a Kings fan. I don't think that McDavid winning the cup would be joyous. I think it would be a release of pressure. It'd be like, okay, he got one. We can move on with our life.
I think that depends where you are.
But if Toronto won the cup, I feel like that's the conclusion of the story of the original expansion.
Okay. And let me expand on that.
Yeah.
Because I think what you're talking about is that the average sports fan, and I mean average anywhere, if you said, when's the last time the Toronto Maple Leafs won and would it matter to you? They would say, I have no idea. And no.
Sure.
We're talking about the hockey piece of the pie, but we can't compare that to the Cubs and the Red Sox because there are many more baseball fans who grew up with it or whose parents grew up with it. Remember, hockey is our little slice of the pie, and that's it.
But I'm talking about our slice. Like I wouldn't
in our slice.
You know, I just hung out with my best friend yesterday, and I love to reference him when I fight with people about how much hockey matters outside of Canada.
Yeah,
he's 45 years old.
Okay,
he's got 4 kids under the age of 10. 3 of them are boys. He plays golf all the time. He is a season ticket holder, or at least he used to be a season ticket holder for Stanford football and basketball. He traveled from Southern California to Northern California to attend sporting events, right?
Okay.
He's a huge sports fan. He had what was Luck's first name, the quarterback from
Andrew Luck.
And he had an Andrew Luck fathead sticker, on the wall in his master bed. Like, he's a sports guy.
So he doesn't know the difference between a hockey puck and a chocolate cupcake.
I don't think he knows who Connor McDavid is.
I wouldn't. You think the average sports fan does?
No,
they don't. They have no idea because hockey is our own world.
Right. And I have that argument with people all the time. But so within our world, if I flip on NHL Network, I just feel like the team they're most likely to be talking about on any given day at any given moment is the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I think that there is and it's media, not necessarily fans. I think there is a media investment in them winning that would leave them at a loss. If Toronto finally wins a Stanley Cup.
What do we talk about? You mean, what's the big deal?
Yeah, because once it's happened, who cares, right? Like, I don't care if Boston ever wins another World Series. They've already done it. I don't care if the Cubs win another World Series. They've already done it. I don't care who the next Michael Jordan is because LeBron James has been around for 20 years. The new conversation is who's the next LeBron James? And the answer is probably nobody.
Right.
And also I just...
Guy. Well, but again, it's about who the next phenomenon is in whether it's a player or a team or an unbelievable story, but that's fleeting. It's not
fleeting. And this was an argument I had at work. I can't remember if it's bled into the podcast yet or not.
Okay.
I think because the way the media operates and not operates, but just the way technology has changed the way that the media works and the way that we all interact with it and the way that we think.
Right.
I think it's harder today to create widespread stories that people care about than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, certainly 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I agree. Because kids are on there, and I hate to sound like an old man, but I am on my phone all the time. I won't say kids. I'm on my phone all the time. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter. I'm on, Instagram and Discord and Reddit. And
it has to be something special to catch your attention for more than 10 seconds.
But not special. It has to be, other people have to be enamored with it. And that's,
okay.
And that's the fight I always had with people about why hockey doesn't catch on, is because you can't trick people into liking it. They have to see other people liking it and get curious and want to know what it is that those people like it.
Well, I don't know if you want to get into that, but I've been saying for decades that if I'm a team, and I don't care if you're the new Seattle Kraken or the old LA Kings, or certainly, one of the original six, I have every year one game at least, or you could do it every night to a certain amount. I mean, there's not only so many seats, but not every game sold out all the time. I would give those seats out to people who have never been to a game. I would do it to like a high school or a middle school or something like that, where you expose kids to, you've never been to a game. You have to go and you have to see it in person. And there's somebody there to explain offsides and icing and whatever. And then by the third period, like it happened to me, if my Canadian friend didn't talk me into going to a game, Game 7, the first year of the Kings, when they lost 9-4 to the Minnesota North Stars and got their asses kicked, I would never have been a hockey fan, and my life would have been so I don't even know how my life would have been.
Right.
That's how much and that's what I would do. I would, if it's one game or a few games every year, it's a special. We're going to give out 100 tickets, 1,000 tickets, 20, whatever it is. I would do that and expose it to kids who've never had it before, but are interested in learning. And their friends, they're going to tell their friends, and you can't do it on TV. You have to be there.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you on that one. I just wonder, like I said, because every team, every sport is going to have its local support.
Yeah.
Even though I don't care about the Buffalo Sabres. No offense to the Sabres. I just don't.
No, why would you? Yeah,
they're far away. They're in a time zone that makes it difficult for me to follow. There's 32 teams now. That's just one of the ones that slips through the cracks. Exactly. I know who Tage Thompson is. I know Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen just because I like the name. But in order to make a team in any sport have staying power, I just don't know what it would take. Because like the buildings that are beloved, it's going to require staying power. Even a splash in the pan, something, whether it's the Vegas Golden Knights finally win the Stanley Cup after 6 years in the league. And you go, oh, okay, wow, all right, cool. All right, they came in, they did all this, blah, 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 blah.
Now what?
Yeah, now what? Like, I don't care. Now, if they had won 3 in a row,
right,
I go, oh, okay, this is now, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They barely made the playoffs. And now this year, people are expecting, that it'll even be harder for them.
You seem to enjoy saying that.
I did a lot.
I can see that.
I'm bummed that they won it at all. I would have liked for them not to. But I just, like I said, I've just become obsessed with the idea of stories, and have we turned everything into that mentality? Because when I was growing up, I sort of assumed that one of the thrills of sports was, when I was in my late teens and early 20s, the Kings were not very good. And I didn't care. Every year was a new opportunity. Every year was a new, okay, well, maybe this year. And I probably should have realized in the late 90s that it wasn't going to happen. But
yeah, I dealt with that for 45 years.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
Well, yeah. But the point is, now that we're in this post-Cup win world, my entire experience of looking at the team and the seasons and the turning of the pages and the contracts and the management and everything, it's all through the filter of those 3 seasons, 2012, 2013, and 2014.
Right.
Prior to that, I didn't run everything through the filter of 93 and go, oh, well, we have to get this guy, we have to get this guy, we have to do it this way and that way. But now I just look back at 12 through 14 and I'm just like, oh, well, that was clearly the blueprint. That was clearly the pinnacle of success. And so my entire view has changed. And I just, like I said, I'm just sort of wondering if Toronto finally won.
Okay. But
would that change the way we all think about the league?
I don't think so at all. I really don't, because I think you're talking about, again, you use the term staying power.
Yeah.
Staying power, in your case, is from a local standpoint. Toronto's case is from NHL Network or ESPN, whatever, national or semi-international with Canada, obviously, standpoint, right? So you have to separate the two because they're totally different. You don't give a damn about the Buffalo Sabres. Do you know the people in Buffalo think you're insane for this conversation because they're still waiting for their first Stanley Cup?
Well, but I know they don't care about the Kings too.
No. I'm not talking about that.
That's true. They're still, that's true. They're still living their story. They
are their own version of the Chicago Blackhawks, or the old, all the teams that went through decades and decades of nothing.
That's true, and Vancouver as well.
Yeah, exactly. So staying power. I want to separate that from a local to a national, including Canada in this case.
All right. Well, I didn't expect you to talk me out of my idea so quickly.
Okay, well, that's why I'm here.
All right.
I'm not trying to talk you out of anything. I'm just giving you a perspective.
Yeah.
That staying power, it means totally different to somebody who lives in LA to somebody who lives in Iowa right now, who happens to be a hockey fan. They don't give a damn about the Kings. Maybe they just like the league.
Well, then let me ask you this.
Yes or no? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It absolutely does.
Okay.
You're just forcing me to pivot to a different conversation. So I'm having to improvise on the fly.
Okay.
Because this is another question. This is another phrase that I hear a lot. I'm not sure I agree with it. In fact, I know I don't.
Okay.
The idea that the game is better today than it was in eras past.
I think it is, personally.
Really? Why?
I think it's much better.
Why?
I miss some of the greatness of, for example.
Let me cut you off. I don't think it's better or worse. I think the game just is the game. So I'm not saying I don't think it's worse today, but
I'll give you a lot of examples why I think it, and I'm almost positive it is better. Yeah, I mean, you can have your own perspective. I mean, we could both look at a painting and you love it and I hate it.
Sure.
But there's a history behind that painting. And then if you knew the history, maybe you would love it a little more, even though you hated the way it looked, depending. Sure. Anyway, let's use some guy named Bobby Orr as an example.
All right.
Okay?
Never heard of him.
Go watch the old video. Watch his highlights. They are ridiculously amazing, right? He goes zigzagging around guys like they are stuck to the ice. Well, I know more than one guy, and I mean a lot more than one guy, who played in that era or a little past him, saying, I couldn't make a team today.
Right.
And they were in the NHL then, because the guys are better. There are skaters on the fourth line now that might be first and second line skaters in the old days. Guys are better skaters. They're better athletes. They are better. I like people can't see or look, but I can.
Yeah.
I don't know about it's not even close.
I don't question the truth of what you're saying. I just don't know that it's the word better. They are definitely
better athletes, they're
more
better
physically
skaters,
capable.
They're more skilled. I'm talking about the average guy, not the greats are the greats.
Gordy
Howe was great.
Listen, I have this fight with Austin Stanovich all the time. He's one of the guys that covers the team for the Hockey News now.
All right.
And he's a skating, I don't want to say a skating nerd, but he's a skating nerd.
Is he a skater himself?
Yes, he's played.
Oh, okay.
I don't pay attention to skating at all. I concede it's a blind spot for me. It's something I should get better at, but I just don't. I just don't pay attention to it.
By the way, you're spoiled, and I tell this to people who don't watch hockey. You totally forget that these guys are on skates. What they're doing.
Oh no, no. But the difference.
I'm going to say though, if you watch what they do now compared to what they used to do, again, look at fourth lines 25 years ago. Those guys wouldn't even be in the American League.
But because we now have this hyper focus on these sub skills, whether it's skating or shot or whatever, because now the industry has evolved, the barriers to entry have evolved. And so there are guys like, one of the guys that might not make a team today might be Luc Robitaille.
Maybe.
Well, okay. Maybe. You can't tell me that Luc Robitaille isn't better.
No. I'm not talking again. That's an individual thing. You can't you can generalize, but you can't get that guy wouldn't do this and this guy. I don't go there because if you're great in your era, you're great in your era. Okay. But when you look at how fast the game is now, when they move the puck around, for example, the team you love so much, the Edmonton Oilers, the way they move the puck on the power play is ridiculous. It is unmatched in the history of the game. Forget the numbers. It is incredible what they do with the speed and the quickness. It could not have been done in another era because that speed was not there. It wasn't.
I don't disagree. I'm just not sure that I think that makes it better.
I think it makes it much better.
All right. Well,
that again, personal taste.
Yeah.
You're not wrong, even though you are. You don't have to think of the same as me, even though you should. I'm just kidding.
But I mean, like, I can remember watching, and again, I'm going to get specific, even though you're saying not to.
No, that's fine.
Like they made the rules changes in the in the 2004-2005 lockout, right? They took out the red line, 2-line passes are now allowed. They put in the trapezoid, all that stuff.
Yep.
I remember watching Solani in Korea move the puck up the ice perfectly fast.
Oh, they were fast.
They had odd man rushes. They had outnumbered attacks. They had chances on the fly. It was exciting. I remember watching the Red Wings, right? The Russian Five. They were just
phenomenal.
as capable of making beautiful
Absolutely.
hockey. But they also had guys who couldn't, that played a different game and a different role. And I just think it made the game slightly more diverse in style. Whereas now, like, for example, the slingshot on the power play, that play where, right, everybody lines up on the blue line. One guy moves through the neutral zone and drops it back to a guy. Every team does that now because it works.
Typical.
Because it works, because it's effective.
Yeah.
But because it works, because it's effective, just means that everybody now does it. And I don't watch basketball enough to know if this
It's
is
the
true.
same in every sport.
Yes.
If it works, we're going to try it, and then eventually the defense will figure it out, and it won't work anymore, and they'll try something else. I mean, that's no different than anything else.
But it just means that nobody there aren't teams that have terribly unique styles anymore. You can say, okay, well, the Kings play a more structurally sound defensive system than blah, blah, blah. And that's because Todd McClellan is, et cetera, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But then you watch the power play and you're like, oh, well, they're just doing the slingshot. And it's like, oh, they're doing the 1-3-1. The Rangers are doing the 1-3-1. That team's doing the 1-3-1. And, the media chooses to hyper focus on it here and there. But it's like, yeah, okay.
Right.
Everybody's just kind of playing the same way. And you look at the scouting ranks and it's like, well, okay, can he skate good? No. Well, we're not taking him until, then he'll be an undrafted free agent signing.
Yeah, but it's a different era because you have to skate better or you're not going to be able to compete. You can't stay up.
That's the part I don't believe.
You cannot have a slow fourth line anymore. Slow. Now, they may not, of course, they're not going to be as skilled as your number one line. I'm not talking about skill. I'm not even talking about speed as much as I am quickness. I don't know all the terms, skating terms that would be the correct ones. But you have to be a pretty damn good skater these days to compete at this level.
I don't know that I'm not going to disagree with that statement. I'm going to say I'm not sure that there's evidence to support it one way or the other, because at this point, if you're not a good skater, you don't even get a chance. There's a guy in the Kings system who is considered to be a bad skater. He's also considered to have the highest hockey IQ amongst defensive. I mean, he's not a prospect anymore, but he's considered to have an incredibly high hockey IQ. He doesn't get minutes because they can't get over the fact that he can't skate. Never mind the fact that he'd probably do pretty well.
Okay, if I had a great basketball IQ, the greatest in the history of the world, Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West would be jealous of me. Wouldn't matter. I'm 5'7".
Well, wouldn't you be Isaiah Thomas?
No. Isaiah Thomas wasn't 5'7". I'm saying me. Forget, there are examples everywhere.
Yeah.
Spud Webb was 5'6" or whatever he was, 5'5". Okay, there's always an example, but in general, you're not going to make it because you can't compete against the reason your sport has superstars.
And I'm fine with that, and I agree with that. I just wonder, I just wonder and worry if we have eliminated, so for example, there are Theo Flurries and Spud Webbs and whoever
and there always will be.
Was Kirby Puckett short, or am I thinking of a different?
He wasn't. I don't remember his height, but he
Who
was
am
short.
I thinking of that was?
You mean in baseball?
Yeah, shortstop. There was some tiny guy.
Oh, there was a bunch of them.
All right. Well, anyway, the point is, I think now that we have
yes,
corporatized the scouting process.
Okay.
It's nobody wants to take risks because the stakes have gone up, because the prices have gone up, because jobs, you get paid more and you get more, once your foot's in the door, you're in and you're in forever. So you don't want to make a mistake. So you're not going to be the guy who takes a risk on a guy that can't skate good.
Right.
So now we don't have any of these outliers. We don't have any of these interesting stories. We just have a bunch of guys who can skate really, really well, but aren't good players. And they're on the Kings for 2 years. And then they're on the Blackhawks and they're still fast.
And they're on 5 teams and then gone.
And they're not that fun to watch.
I get it.
And they don't win much.
But remember, money has killed everything in all of sports.
Yes.
Because.
Well, that's true.
It's not just, sort of. No. That is everything.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason in football, guys start their first year when Aaron Rodgers was forced to sit for 3 years. And that was the way it was forever in the NFL. You had to sit and watch because you weren't ready. You were not, but they didn't care because they weren't paying you a fortune from the start.
Yeah.
And it wasn't about money. And everything's about money now.
Now that we're, 20 years into the salary cap era, 19 years, whatever it is.
Okay.
I am stunned sometimes that people don't understand how important it is. And I get it. Nobody wants to.
It's not just important, it's everything.
Exactly. And nobody wants to look at spreadsheets and nobody wants to think about how it impacts. But
it's
every
reality.
offseason, I'm looking at the cap numbers and people are saying like, well, this guy, why don't you go get that guy? And I'm like, you don't understand. It's before you even get to the performance on the field, you have to do the math on the Ross on the spreadsheet.
What you will never understand because you didn't live my experience.
Yeah.
The idea of sitting there and looking at the caps is I'd rather poke myself in the ear with a knife.
But okay, so going back to that era,
I want to watch sports.
Sure,
I don't want to be a banker.
I totally get it. And I'm just going to toss this out for no good reason. One of the things that I think gets totally under remembered and under prioritized in the Kings 2 cup winning seasons is that Richards and Carter were on cap circumventing deals.
Okay.
That like, if they weren't on those cap circumvented deals that were made illegal in 2013.
But that every year is going to have that. Things are going to change.
Not like that.
No. But I mean, every era is going to have a change where, you couldn't do that 20 years ago. And we won a championship then. You can't do that. I mean, every sport, they're all going to have something.
But when you're doing the sort of math on how it happens, you go like, all right, well, 2 huge cogs were on contracts that
you took advantage of a loophole.
Brilliantly, but it's hard to replicate.
The loophole goes away.
Yeah.
And there'll be other loopholes down the road.
Yeah. So. But this is the glitch that I think we'll probably wrap up after I finish this crazy thought and you can weigh in on it.
No, I haven't changed your mind enough, but go ahead.
This is when I try to talk to my friends, many of whom are obviously sports fans.
Yeah.
And they want to ask me a million questions, or maybe they're just humoring me. I don't know, but they do ask me a million questions about the gig. Professional sports is a paradox because when you're a kid and you're doing sports, it's just whatever kids are on your block or whatever kids are in your class, or you pick 2 team captains and they pick, whatever alternating, but it's from the pool of kids that are close to you.
Yes.
And theoretically, when you get up, higher in grades, junior high, high school, whatever, it's still just kids near you. And in theory, before college sports turned into, professional sports with, amendments, it was still theoretically just, slightly older kids in a slightly larger area.
Yes.
But now, I tell people, that I think we should get rid of the draft because I think it doesn't do any of the things that it's meant to do. And people assume that it would lead to the destruction of the league because they innately understand that profit seeking has changed sports. And so everyone says no, the teams with all the money would just win all the time, which I admit shouldn't be how sports works. quote unquote shouldn't, right? Like you don't want just like, oh, well, the rich guy who can just buy up all the toys gets to win every year.
So what planet are you from, sir?
Earth. Well, I just don't think the draft has anything to do with that, but that's a whole other
that's
other conversation for a whole other
is.
day. But yeah, so professional sports is weird, and the media's only made it weirder.
Wait a minute, I'm going to get a T-shirt that says that professional sports is
that's
weird.
the nice version. The phrase that I usually use is just that sports are dumb. Never mind, never mind professional sports. Sports.
You mean sports are dumb? The idea of playing sports?
No, just the way it all plays out. You know, you could watch a game where the Kings outshoot their opponent 40-10, and they'll lose 5-0.
Well, it's competition. I mean, that's all it is.
But it's dumb. It's just, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's in a beautiful way.
Well, I mean, if as an old tennis player, for example, right?
Yes.
I mean, you can have 25 aces and lose in straight sets.
So when I was growing up, I lived in this neighborhood with a couple friends of mine, and we would ride our bikes to the local park and we'd play tennis. And there were three of us that always played together. Me, my friend Nick, and my friend John. I could beat Nick every single time. John could beat me, and Nick could beat John. But none of us could beat the other one. And so we play, we get out on the courts, and there's only one court, and there's three of us. So, winner stays on and loser comes off.
Right.
And it was but nobody ever played more than 2 games in a row because the next guy up would beat the next. And it would, like I said.
So that's the dumb thing.
Yes. Sports are dumb.
Okay. But that's what makes it fun. I
totally agree.
If it was so predictable, nobody would give a damn. Remember, it is the best drama in all of life. Because we don't have no idea what the final score is going to be and what it's going to produce.
I think that's the perfect sentiment to go out on. Ted Sobel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, God, I wanted to say one more thing.
Oh, please go for it.
About pro sports, okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'm, being as old as I am, 1,001, but who's counting?
You don't look a day over 999.
Exactly, I've been told that. Thank you so much. That I think, depending on the era you grew up in. Mm-hmm. This is extremely important in how you see all of this. Because as a kid of the 60s, I grew up in LA, a huge Dodgers fan. And Jesse, we had 9 games on television every year. That's it. Only the Dodgers in San Francisco. We had no other games for years and years and years. And yet, I think that sports now does not do a great job of creating passionate fans. I think that's soon in whatever amount of decades is going to slightly go away, and it's going to affect how the young fan sees the game. For example, we can't buy a program anymore.
Yeah.
The way we used to remember that night from. We don't get a ticket anymore. We got a damn barcode. I have tickets from the 60s and the 70s that I look back on with passion. You think the second you get in, you throw it in the trash can. You have zero passion building with kids now. It bothers me. I'm going to be long gone, so it's not going to affect me. But I really, really am curious on how this is going to end up, whatever amount of decades from now.
All right, so now you just kicked off a whole new. We're not wrapping up now. We're going to talk on this.
You do whatever you want to do.
So one of my favorite possessions is my ticket stub to the game that Wayne Gretzky broke the record.
There you go.
And I have 2 Ziploc bags full of my old ticket stubs. Most of the games are meaningless, but I kept them.
And if and when Ovechkin breaks his record, the kids are going to say, "Where's my barcode?"
Well,
in the trash, nobody's going to care.
So this is again,
yes,
I don't want to blame this on kids because kids aren't the ones that make these decisions.
No, it's not the kids' fault at all.
But this goes back to the storytelling thing. I can remember when I don't remember how old I was when Pokemon first started getting popular.
Okay.
But I remember looking at it and going, this is the dumbest thing ever. And I totally understand
sports, of course.
No, sports is beautiful.
You're the one
dumb.
who said sports is dumb.
Sports is dumb the way it happens. Pokemon's not dumb. It's actually sinisterly brilliant because it has no story.
Right.
It's just about acquiring pixels on your phone.
Okay.
Like there is a card game and I'm sure people play it and everything, but most people in my experience anyway, and concede I'm too old to have been heavily influenced by Pokemon, but there was a bunch of video games, there's a cartoon and everything. But the point is, it introduces, and I was a comic book fan, so I do see the tie-in, and it's starting to happen more and more in every facet of life.
Okay.
You make everything about ticking off boxes. And that's what I meant earlier when I was talking about the story of sports. It's like, okay, the Red Sox won, tick. The Cubs won, tick. Okay, what's the next legend we can take care of, that we can knock down, that we can provide that dopamine hit to everybody who doesn't really care. So St. Louis finally wins, and people are like, aren't you thrilled for the people of St. Louis? I'm like, no, not at all.
You have zero interest.
Not only that, I don't like the St. Louis Blues because they swept the Kings in 1998. So if you'll pardon me, I'm rooting against them.
Yeah, but the average fan is not you, and they still don't care.
But this is the point. The powers that be want to get as many of the casual observers to feel happy for half a second so that they can flash a bunch of commercials in that half a second and then move on.
But wouldn't you, if you were the NHL Network or whoever's doing the final?
No, absolutely. But this is the thing I always said about the shootout, because people would say you can't argue that the shootout's not exciting. And I go, I would never argue that the shootout isn't more exciting than ending the game in a tie. But I would also never argue that a banana split is not more exciting than a cup of yogurt, of organic, Greek yogurt. But if I eat a banana split every night for every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to be less healthy than if I mix it up every once in a while.
The rest of your life will be extremely short.
But that's my point, is that we have this push to make everything. And again, I started this off talking about the jerseys and the buildings.
Right.
There's this idea that everything has to be amazing, but you can't get the part that made the Red Sox finally winning the World Series amazing is that it had been 86 years or whatever it was. The thing that made the Cubs winning amazing was that it had been 100 years.
Yeah.
Once you knock off all of those things, once you get rid of ticket stubs and patience and waiting for things to mature into something amazing, I guess that's what this entire conversation has been about.
Yes.
It's like we're all collectively addicted to finding the next amazing story without realizing that, like, Michael Jordan wasn't the next Michael Jordan until he won his second title. And LeBron James wasn't the next guy until he had played 15 years.
Right.
Like,
there's very few overnight successes, by the way.
You can't be, because success is measured in time.
Exactly. Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you win, like Magic Johnson won a championship his first year.
But what if he never won another one?
Yeah, but what if?
No, but I'm saying what made him amazing was that he won 5, not that he won 1.
Well, what made him amazing at the start was that he won it without Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We're not going to go into, but Kareem didn't play Game 7, and he played every position against Philadelphia to win a game on the road that nobody thought they.
But even that, and this is fresh in my mind because I was watching that HBO show.
Oh, okay.
Didn't he win the national title in college?
Yes.
And hadn't that been a 4-year story building there, and then became a 5-year story in his rookie season in the NBA?
It was 3 years, but I could be wrong. But
whatever. But the point is, he didn't show up.
But you can't. I mean, you can't compare a college career to a pro career, because when you played.
No, but I'm comparing stories.
Yeah. Well, there is no story for most freshmen, especially, nowadays it's a different world with NIL and all that crap. But I'm talking about the story's rarely about a freshman.
No, but so Cam Ward wins the Stanley Cup as a rookie with the Carolina Hurricanes in 2006. And then Cam Ward might as well have dropped off the face of the earth.
Yes.
Ken Dryden wins the Stanley Cup as a rookie with the Montreal Canadiens, and then goes on to be one of the most fascinating human beings the planet may have ever seen. What makes Ken Dryden interesting isn't that he won the Stanley Cup as a rookie with the Canadiens. It's what he did after that.
Right.
So Tiger Woods wins the Masters. How old was he? Early 20s, late teens. I don't even remember.
I think it was 21. I think
so amazing, fantastic story, right? Great. But what made him Tiger Woods was that he kept doing it.
Right.
I don't know.
But again, every guy has their own story and the reason. And I love this, and this is for another discussion. But when people bring up the term the media, It's like some guy's name is Joe Media.
Sure.
And everybody's exactly the same. Okay. But I get it. The media has evolved, not necessarily for the better either. I'm an old school media guy. When I break a story, I need two sources,
Right.
not one rumor.
Right.
Okay. Everybody wants, I broke the story that Gretzky was leaving the Kings to the St. Louis Blues, for example. Okay. I had only one source, but my source was incredible. And that's why I went with it. Otherwise, I broke the story that the LA Raiders, after the Raiders and Rams left, that the Seattle Seahawks were moving to Los Angeles. You don't even know about it.
I know. I was going to say, I think you got that one wrong.
No, I did not get that one wrong. They moved to Los Angeles. They never.
Seattle Seahawks?
Look it up, baby.
All
1996.
Right. I will.
They moved to, it's very little is on that. It wasn't there was no, social media or anything. If there was, I would have been a genius or a big idiot because they never played here. But that was, I didn't say they were going to play here for 30 years. I said they're moving to LA and everybody, and I got just hammered in Seattle, and the owner of the team called me an idiot, and then the owner moved the team. They moved to Rams camp, which was empty at the time in Fullerton. And then Paul Allen, the billionaire, bought the team and moved them back.
All right.
But they were not ever officially the LA Seahawks, but they moved out of the offices and were in Southern California for, I don't know, 2 weeks or whatever it was.
All right. Well, I'll take your word for it because I
don't
can't
make
Google
this
it
crap
fast
up.
enough. But I mean, to your point about the media, like I always tell people, I'm not the media.
I get it.
Like I work for I've never considered myself to. I don't have a journalism degree. I've never had a byline, never had a deadline.
You have a job with the team. That's that doesn't mean you're media at all.
Right. But when I talk about the media and how it's changed, I'm really talking about how the internet has changed
very much. All
right. Well, at this point, I think we have devolved into just two old men yelling at clouds. So I am gonna wrap it up here.
Jesse,
Ted Sobel, thank you for joining me.
Only one old man in this conversation.
Sorry, all right.
You're not two old men.
An old man and a middle-aged man.
I love this. This is great.
Let's do it again soon.
Talk. Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for coming, Ted. We'll talk to you soon.
You got it, man.